All right, so welcome to our session on Nearpod and a little background about Nearpod. So this is a tool that we've actually had for 2 years, but it was something I had a very small license for. Like this is something I really wanted when I first started here. So we did it where we got 10 licenses first and I was able to dole those out. And then I ran out of licenses, so I got another 10 last year. Those went away. And then now we're at the point where financially, it just makes sense to just make one for everyone. So we're at the point where anyone who wants a Nearpod license can get one. The big difference between Nearpod and some of the other tools that you see we have is you're going to have to ask me for a license and I manually create you one, which is not a big deal. And it's not part of like the single sign-on. So as you change your password for other items at F&M, this is not part of that. So whatever you set as your password is just kind of your thing to maintain from here on out. So Nearpod is something that it helps really create something that's interactive. So if you have a lesson where you mix and match maybe some videos, some slides, you can add different types of interactivity throughout your lesson. It's definitely different than just voicing over stuff, and the types of interaction, which is why I love this tool, the types of interaction you can ask your students to do is a lot greater than other tools you may have seen, like a Kahoot, where they basically just answer A, B, C, or D, or Quizlet, where they're answering, again, multiple choice type questions. I hope by the end, when we get into one, you'll see that you have a lot more options, including those options. The other reason I really like this tool for the situation we're in now is it's something that you can take a lesson and you can either do it via Canvas as like a self-paced student activity, or you can choose to do it with your students either via Zoom or in the classroom. So I like that it can go in any one of those directions, which I think also makes it a lot more useful for what we're working on now. So at this point, I'm actually going to share my screen here. And what makes the most sense to me is if you actually experience it first, and then I'll backtrack in terms of how it was created and then how you can add it to Canvas. So I'm in our cohort 2, and I've created something in module 4 called Experience Nearpod Optional. So if you've attended any of the other things we've done in the last few days, so Hypothesis was yesterday, anything else where you can add something as an external tool, this is another example of that. So your directions are actually going to be the same, and you can add it as a Canvas assignment, which is what you're seeing here, and I'll show you why that's helpful in a second, or you can add it as an activity in a module. So I'm choosing to do it as a 0-point Canvas assignment just so we can play. So if in this Zoom meeting you're in a position where you can handle being in a Zoom meeting and participating, feel free to click on this Experience Nearpod. If this seems too much for you right now, don't worry about experiencing the Nearpod, because through me sharing my Zoom screen, I think you're going to get the look and feel of it as well. So what's very common in Canvas when you want to use a tool that's in Canvas but is not Canvas is to also have it load in a new window, which is what I set here, partially because if it loaded here in our screen, you still have all this Canvas stuff on the left and this stuff on the right, and it takes up too much real estate. So opening it in a new window, as I'm gonna do now, and as you guys can do if you choose to participate, allows you to have more space in order to view the lesson. So I think that's a good thing that's important. What should be happening for you guys right now, because this is now fully integrated into Canvas, as soon as you, as students in the Course Development Institute, click on the link, it should auto-populate your name there, and then you can click Join Session. All right. And this is an example of a self-paced Nearpod, which means you guys are free to go through it at your own pace. When you add it the Canvas way, again, through assignments and through a module activity, it's always going to be self-paced. Again, you get to choose the speed. If you choose to do this lesson live, either via Zoom or via classroom activity, you as the instructor actually can control their pace. So since I set this one as self-paced, that way those that can't make this session can still play with one if they want to. You'll be able to see that you can click this arrow over here and actually go through it on your own speed. I'm going to also go through it just so I can show those people what else you can do. So what I've done with this particular Nearpod is also show all the different things a Nearpod can do in terms of the interactive elements, just so that you can see what that looks like. And then I think this will make more sense when we create one, so you'll see how we got to this point. So one of the things you can do, and you're going to be limited by what Nearpod has built in, but there is some 3D modeling that you can choose from that's interactive. So I can control my screen and bring it around. If you're participating, you should be able to control your screen and manipulate it yourself. So that's one example of an interactive element. Another one is, I know a lot of you like these simulations. It definitely doesn't have all the simulations, because I know there's a lot more in this library, partly because not all of them are HTML based. A lot of them are still Flash based, which means they can't come in here necessarily. But these are, again, an interactive element where you can actually click around and play with some of this stuff. So again, as a student is self-paced, you can actually have them play with things. And again, it's not all the simulations that they have, just because they haven't converted them all. The next one's an example of what Nearpod calls their virtual reality, but essentially it is 360 images, and the images that they have in their library are more places around the world, but it is a nice way to kind of visualize something very specific. So that's another option that you can add in here. They also have a graphing calculator built in, so you can actually come in here and manipulate items in terms of a graphing calculator and do that how you'd like to as a participant. I know I'm going to go through these quickly. You can also add video. So if there's like a YouTube video that you want them all to see, and then maybe you want to ask them questions about, this is a good way you can do that too. You can also upload your own videos, but it's not going to be anything of any length, because size is definitely an issue here. If you are really looking to add video, then that's where the Canvas Studio tool is going to be a little more handy for you. Let's see what this one is. Okay, you can also add your own PDFs. So this is where that mixing and matching comes in handy. You're able to add Google Slides, you're able to add PowerPoint slides, you're able to build slides directly into Canvas, you can add documents. So this is actually an example of a PDF that then you can come in and you would all, like each one of your students would see this in the order that you set your lesson. And you can also link to websites. So for example, this one is linking to, which I will go over in a second. This is the web page that I'm starting to help build resources on how to do exactly what we're talking about right now, so that you'll remember how to do that. So that's just linking to that resource website. So it's a good way to get students all going in the same direction. And then, so what we just went through are all the different elements that you can add to a lesson in terms of giving them information, right? The next bit is going to be the activities you can add. So you can add a time to climb, which I did not put an example in here because of time, but essentially that works really well in a live situation where you're doing it together with your class, because you can actually make it a game where you ask questions and Nearpod will pair your students up and they have to race to see who can complete it first. So again, self-paced, that doesn't work great, but in a classroom setting, that might be really fun. You can ask open-ended questions. You can do matching pairs, quizzing type questions, Flipgrid, which is a Microsoft product that I know some people had used in the spring. That now integrates with Nearpod. A drawing question, which I think is one of the more powerful activities you can do here. A collaborate board, a poll, fill in the blanks, and a memory test. So if you are following along with me right now, if some of you could actually participate in some of these things so that I can pull up the grading bit in a little bit so I can show you how you can grade in Nearpod. So this is an example of an open-ended question. So the question is, what do you think of Nearpod so far? Someone can type their answer, or a new feature in Nearpod, you can actually record your answer. So for languages, this might be a really helpful thing. So you can actually hear them speak something. And then there's a submit button. The next example is going to be a quiz. You can do more than one question at a time. I have just chosen to do one question as a good example. So these have a right or wrong answer. So you can answer, you would submit, and then you would be able to see the breakdown. If this was a live, like you were doing this in the classroom with your students, this is really powerful because remember, as the instructor, you'd be controlling their screen essentially. So you're controlling the pace of your lesson, which means all your students would actually be answering this question at the same time. And then you as the instructor would get this pie graph that would be like auto-populating, and then you'd be able to share out the data so you guys can discuss it. And you can do the data sharing anonymously too. So you don't have to show students who said what, which is really nice. This is self-paced again, so that's why that's not happening. So this is an example of a drawing question, and I think this is one of my most favorite ones because you can either give them a blank whiteboard space to draw, or you can actually give them something as a starting point. So I've chosen to give them this image as a starting point. You can see at the bottom you have some drawing options. You can choose color, and then they can almost label stuff if you'd like, or if you want them to point out something very specific. All that's possible in a drawing question. So maybe you even have a math problem or a science problem and you actually want to put the problem here and you want them to find something and label it or write it out or whatever. Obviously, we all know that writing on a screen like this isn't always super beautiful. Okay, so keep that in mind as your students are participating, and then they can submit. So that's an example of a drawing question.
Kelly, we have a couple of questions.
Go right ahead, because I can't see anything.
Okay. So are the materials that you import into Nearpod, so for instance, a YouTube video, is that going to be available to students in China?
So Nearpod is totally available to students in China. Yep, so that's another reason why us implementing this more from a all of F&M availability is also doable because it also is available in China.
Okay.
So students should be able to participate, no big deal.
Sarah Tasker is asking whether you're in the instruction version. So she gave a wrong answer to the F&M color question and it didn't show up.
So that's more because we are doing this self-paced. So technically everyone is doing it on their own right now. So that you're not going to see what other people's data points are. It's when you do this as a live lesson together that you would end up seeing everyone's answer come through at once. And I think when we get to the creation side and the sharing side of these, I think that would make a little bit more sense.
And then Scott's got a question in terms of the drawing. Can the instructor draw and the students annotate separately and the instructor erase student annotations?
So in a drawing question, you would need to give them everything they need via one image, and then their ability is to draw. So you can't draw first and then think they can come in later unless somehow your drawing was saved and added as an image first.
Can the instructor erase a student annotation?
No.
Okay.
And then I see we have one on, so in terms of like the 3D and the Nearpod library stuff, right now you're limited to what they have built in. And when we get into creation mode, I think it'll make more sense to see what they have. I think we're caught up there. So I see the question about China has more to do with YouTube videos. I still think the YouTube videos would be blocked, but the tool of Nearpod itself is available in China.
Okay.
Okay. So what, if you're looking at my screen as I share right now, this is an example of a collaborate board. And I think this is also awesome in terms of a live or a not live student pace activity. So this is the one thing when you're doing student pace that you actually see what other students are doing as you see what's happening right now. And then you can see, as some people are doing, you can actually heart things too. So you can almost do it as a voting mechanism. So this is really powerful, especially in a classroom setting, because you can basically curate ideas like a sticky note board. And then as the instructor, if you're in a live session with your students, you can draw attention to these things. If you wanted to moderate these, you can. Again, this is self-paced, so there's no instructor control here. You're essentially sharing the lesson for them to do. And then if you've noticed at the bottom, you can also add images too. So right now you guys are doing a lot of text sticky noting, but you can even ask them to find something. So I know it seems a lot of you liked the GIF idea in terms of like an intro activity. So you can have them go find something, an image, and then upload it that way too. There you go, good. So you're also seeing in a student pace lesson, which is what you're seeing, it's also still anonymous. I don't see, you don't see whose name is associated with what.
And can you turn on a function that would allow you to see the names?
If you did this live with your students, you could. But when it's not live, it's always going to be anonymous. All right, so the next one's going to be just an example of a poll. So again, if this was a live lesson that we were all doing together, then the results would populate to the instructor as a pie chart, and then you can share out those results. When you're doing it student paced, as we are right now, then that is not an option. You just answer it and you go. All right. So a couple other things before I get off the screen to point out. Number one, as a student, you can go backwards and forwards. So that's where they can really control their pacing. The other thing students have, both in a live Nearpod and a student paced Nearpod, is the ability to click this pencil and actually take notes as they go. I don't find that they're really going to do this in the self-paced one. However, I definitely have worked with faculty at F&M who can run a whole, like 30 minutes of their class via a Nearpod and allow students to take like Google Doc notes, and those notes would be saved then to their Google Drive. So that's a way that even though you're controlling their screen, they can still kind of do notes as they see fit. So this is going to be totally up to the student, whether they want their notes to be saved as email, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive. They have all those abilities. Okay. So I know that was a really quick way to experience it, and it was very disjointed because I was essentially just trying to throw in all the different things you can do in a Nearpod into one thing. So let's go actually we're into Canvas right now. I think a lot of you guys noticed there is a Nearpod button now in your course. This is a tool that you still have to ask me for an account. So if this is something you want, just shoot me an email and I will create you an account. It will put you as part of our F&M one because we get all the features with the F&M one versus the free one. Once you have an account from me, then this Nearpod button will actually, I don't even want to say it's useful because you could actually hide this button because it's sometimes when you install tools in Canvas, they give you buttons here on the side that aren't really helpful, and Nearpod's an example of that. So what it's going to do is it's essentially going to load the Nearpod interface in Canvas. So I'll show you what it looks like for me since I have an account and I should be logged in. The negative of this, just like loading a Nearpod in Canvas, is see how it's taking up too much. It's not giving me enough space on my screen because I have my course menu, I have my Canvas menu, and now my Nearpod screen's crammed in there. So this is gonna be exactly the same look and feel as you have of going to nearpod.com directly. You will just have a lot more room to work if you actually go to the direct website. So this is why I would recommend you also hide this button because you're gonna be confined to this little area and this is not any fun. So I kept it visible to show you, but what I would actually do is I'm going to go to settings. And as students, you get a little bit different view, but again, as students, I would also rather go to nearpod.com to participate. I would go to the navigation tab, I would find Nearpod, and I would disable it. I am not disabling it from using it in my course. All I am doing is making this side menu, make it go away from there, because it's not helpful over there at all, because I think it really makes things too small. And remember, I'm zoomed in a lot just for this video we're doing together. So think about how much smaller that would actually be. So what you would really want to do is go to, once you have an account from me, you would go to nearpod.com. And if one of you guys could actually put the link in the chat.
I will do that.
Thank you. And you're going to get your own like library lesson creation area. So that's what you're seeing on my screen right now. So all the lessons that I've ever created are kind of hanging out here. And then I can use any of these in Canvas or with my students. So this is where they kind of live. So this is the one we just did together. So let's say we're in on campus in a classroom together, and we want to do this live together versus what we just did as a student-paced lesson in Canvas. Then as the instructor, once your lesson is created, you would log into Nearpod, you would come here and you would select live lesson. It's going, and a lot of you I think have seen this type of thing before, because all the similar tools and Kahoot, quizzes, all those act very similar, where they tell you, this is basically telling your students to go to join.nearpod.com, plug in this code. Once they plug in this code, it will prompt them for their name. They would add their name, and then you're doing it as a live lesson. So this is how you would do it in person with your students. And this is when you control their screen. And then this is also where you get the data live that you can then share out. I think for time, do we want to try this as a live session? Would that be helpful? I think we could. Yes. Yes. Okay. You convinced me, Giovanna. All right. If you are able, you can do this on a phone, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on a laptop, basically anything that has internet, you can do this on. So if managing 2 windows in a Zoom meeting is hard, please pull out your phone. Go to your internet browser on your phone or whatever you want to use and go to join.nearpod.com and then type in the code that's highlighted, the SHKAN. I think it's all in caps, but I actually don't think the caps matter. There is also free apps. So if this is something you are going to do regularly with your students, they can get a free app on their phone that would just streamline this slightly, essentially. All right. So as an instructor, this is your starting point, and this is where you're waiting for your students to get in. I am, since Amy just put this in the chat, I'm also going to show you, because now you're looking at my screen more from an instructor mode, and you're looking at your device from the student mode. What's nice is if a student gets kicked out or they weren't ready yet, the code is always at the top so that people can always get back in, so that code doesn't go away. So now what you should be noticing is you can't self-pace through this anymore, right? I'm going to control your device right now. A couple other things to note in a live session. Down here is the instructor. I am seeing the student list. So if I know I have 30 students in my classroom, right now I know I have 27 out of 30, so maybe I should wait for my extra 3 to come in. So that's one way I would use it as an instructor. This is also where I can hide and show student names as they respond to my question types. This is where, as an instructor, I can jump to my slides. So maybe I'm running out of time and I want to skip a few things, I can quickly go through. The other thing you have in a live Nearpod session as an instructor is the ability to add some things on the fly. So we all know we have our best intentions to plan a lesson to go according to what you think it should be, and sometimes things change and you want to add some stuff on the fly. In a live lesson, you have this add activity button, and you can actually add web content, an open-ended question, a drawing question, a slide, and true false on the fly as we go. Okay, so I'm going to click the arrow on the right, and what should happen is your own device, if you're participating with me via the code, your own device should eventually slide over as well. So now because I'm controlling your screen, now I'm also, as the instructor, controlling the pacing of our lesson, okay? And what you're seeing here on the screen is a very simple way to, I just built this slide directly in Nearpod. You can do it very simply. So this is the same thing we already did. So we're gonna go through it a little quicker. So we can say, okay, we can all play with this structure together. So if you're on your own device, you're just gonna manipulate it with your fingers. I'm gonna go through this part quickly because of time and get to the more interactive elements. So bear with me here. Quick. Quick. You can also import PowerPoint and Google Slides, yes. Sorry, I know I'm going quickly. In a live session, what's popping up on my screen right now is the video, the YouTube video that I was linking to. This is actually a great feature. As the instructor, I can dictate if I want you all to watch this video separately on your own device, or if I want us all to watch it presumably on the projection in your classroom. Again, it's nice to be able to control. Do you want 30 different sounds going on at one time as everyone watches it on their own device? Or would you rather all of us look together on the projection? So that's another kind of feature for the live lesson. Sorry, I'm going quick. I want to get to the activities. All right. So the first activity that you're seeing, you should see on your screen right now. I have the ability to start the activity. You also, in a live session, can set a timer on your activities. So I set a 30-second timer. So again, these are features for live lessons. Right now, I see all your names. I'm going to hide your student names. I also, as the instructor, note I can judge my pacing because I see what percentage of you have participated. So again, I know how fast or slow to go. Yes, you can voice over slides, but I would highly recommend not doing that unless you do it very little because it is not closed caption in Nearpod. If all you're using Nearpod is to voice over slides, then I would definitely migrate to the Canvas Studio part. So right now I'm seeing 80% of you have participated. So what I'm gonna do, because remember I'm the instructor in this course, that since this was an open-ended question and your names are hidden, I actually can now share some people's results and answers to your device, and it should be anonymous. So maybe I asked a really much more academic question than what I just asked you, and maybe it's wrong. Maybe the answer was wrong, or maybe it needs to be redirected. I can still bring that answer to everyone's device without calling out the student who said it. So that's a nice way you can do this as well. Then I can unshare. I'm going to navigate to the next one. So this is an example of a quiz. So there's definitely a right or wrong answer. As you guys answer on your own device, the answers are going to start popping up on my screen, and it's going to start populating that pie chart I was telling you about. And again, I know where you guys are. So I know 23% of you haven't participated yet. So I know either to move on or wait. All right, so let's say you've all answered, or most of you have answered. I now have this pie chart that I can then share it out with you guys, so then we can talk about the response. But again, it's anonymous, so it shouldn't be calling anyone out for anything. Okay. So the next one is that drawing question again. So remember, I added an image as a starting point. You do not have to add an image as a starting point. You could actually make it just a whiteboard, which it kind of is by default. You have your drawing abilities. You have a submit button at the bottom. And then on my instructor screen, I am seeing each person's thing come as they are submitted. And remember, I am not showing student names, but when I get my data, as the instructor, you always will have a student name as part of your data. The reason I'm not showing student names right now is so that my other students in the class don't see who's doing what. Okay, so as you guys are all circling the image, let me show you how as an instructor you can share these. So maybe I pull up this example. Again, I don't know at this moment who did it. I can click share, and now we can see what someone else did all together, so we can talk about it or whatever you want to do. And again, if you're in a very big classroom, this might be nice too, because you're actually taking something that might seem far away on a screen and actually bringing it closer to everyone too. So you can think about Nearpod is a great way to kind of bring things to people versus them always having to gravitate towards your projection too. All right, so that's an example of drawing live. So this is that collaborate board again. So on my screen, it says, do I want to approve student comments? So essentially in a live lesson, I can moderate or not. I am not gonna moderate. So now it should give you the ability to post that sticky note feel again. There we go. So again, I am making it so student names are not seen, but it is wise. You got this. I'm not moderating this. However, I can actually say on the fly that maybe I do want to show your names, because now I want the ability to actually have you guys vote on something or see stuff. So even on the fly, I can turn the names on and off. So now I see your names are associated with it. I'm gonna hide them again. And then you guys have those little hearts. So as soon, oh my God, whose puppy is that? As soon as you guys see something, so maybe as the instructor, I really want your ideas first, and then I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna say, okay, everyone heart the one you like the most, and then let's, you know, talk about that one or something like that. In a live lesson, I also have the ability to sort these. So maybe I want to sort them by likes. So now I know puppy has the most votes. So then we can say puppy wins. Let's all do our project on puppies. Awesome. All right, going on. All right, so this is an example of a polling question because there is no right or wrong answer. As an instructor, it pauses and prompts me to start the activity because I've set a timer on it. So when I say start activity, now the timer is gonna start, and you can adjust the timer to what you want. I just had it at 30 seconds. So again, anonymous poll, I see as you're coming through, I see how many people still haven't answered, so I know how fast or slow to go. And then when I feel like I have a decent enough participation, if we want to talk about it, I can either wait till the time runs out, which I'll do for this one since we're almost there. And then I still have that pie chart in a polling question, so I can click share. And now that pie chart should get pushed out to all of you. So then we can talk about, like, why do most of you think spring is your favorite season?
Kelly, can you adjust the timer on the fly?
I don't think you can adjust it on the fly. If you're worried about that, then I would just like manually do it in your lesson. So like if I want the flexibility, then I might just tell them, you guys have 45 seconds and I'm just gonna manually keep track of that.
And somebody participated twice. Is there a limit? Is there a way to limit people to responding only once?
I feel like if you participated twice, since I'm actually not seeing any double answers, if that's what you did, I feel like it would always just take your most current answer, which is actually kind of nice just in case you change your mind. I'm gonna pull that back from you. And that's actually the end of this lesson again. So I hope that was a really quick way to both see how you can do it self-paced and how you do it in a live situation. So for time's sake, everyone get out of that. I'm gonna get out of it. And I'm gonna go back in to nearpod.com so then I can show you how we got to this point in terms of creation. Okay, so again, you'll need an account first. Once you have your account, you can also log into nearpod.com. And in terms of creating a lesson, you have two choices. If you are a Google Slides person, this is probably a year old now for Nearpod. You can actually now create Nearpod lessons in Google Slides. If you are not a Google Slide person, or there's certain features you can only do in Nearpod directly, and one of those is voicing over your slides, then you can also create your lesson in Nearpod directly. So let me do Nearpod directly since we're here right now. So I'm going to say lesson in Nearpod. And then this is going to be your creation interface. So you can title your lesson. You can click this plus sign, and then this is where you're going to be separated into two categories. Content, this is all the things you can do. This was usually the stuff that was in the beginning of our, I'm not sure I can zoom in anymore. I know it's kind of small. There we go. This is the stuff that was in the beginning of our lesson we did together. And then you have a separate tab of activities. So these are all the things that students would actively participate in, okay? So you can mix and match all of these things. So if I go back to content, you can create basic slides in Nearpod. It's not like super visually robust, but I think a good rule of thumb when you create stuff in Nearpod is it should be very basic anyway, because slides already can get too busy, right? So I think basic is actually better here, but you see you have a little slide creator, so you can do a template. You can see here in the middle, you actually have the ability to upload files right here. So they take a dot, like a MOV, a PNG, which is an image type, and a JPEG. So this is where you can add some multimedia, or you can click the plus sign, add text, add an image, add GIFs, since I feel like you guys are really into the GIFs right now, as I am. You can change layout. It's all super basic. And then you can save and exit depending on how you've done it. You can also, when I get back to our creation screen, you also have an area down here at the bottom, and this is where you can just drag and drop and or upload already existing PowerPoints, PDFs, and images. So if you want to upload a PowerPoint, I can just drag that to my area here. What it's going to do to PowerPoints is it's actually going to take each slide and make them an image. So if you're someone who made a lot of animation in your PowerPoint, all of that is going to be stripped out and it's going to become images. So either don't waste your time with that or just realize that that's what's going to happen. Everything in every slide in your presentation is then going to be a separate slide in your Nearpod. So my PowerPoint is now loading, and now you can see all my slides are now separate things in my Nearpod. If you want to do the same thing with Google Slides, you can do two things. You can either create it in Google Slides and download it as a PowerPoint, or remember our other creation of Nearpod can be done in Google Slides directly, which I'll show you. Once you have all these separate things, you can actually drag things around. So maybe you want to reorder them because you don't like the way they were ordered, or if you want to delete a separate slide. So maybe I want to delete one slide of all my slides. Because these are now images though, if you want to make a change to what your PowerPoint said, you actually have to make that change in PowerPoint and then re-upload that slide. So you can't do any editing of like slides here because they've been saved as images essentially. So if I click this add slide, so this is where all that mixing and matching can happen. So now maybe I want to do a quiz. I would click on quiz. I would get loaded in the quiz interface. And this is very similar to like how quizzes essentially are made in Canvas as well. You can add your question. You can do your answer options. You can add more than 2 options. So you have add answer. You have to put a check mark next to the correct one. Some of you can see over here, you can also add media, video, or audio instructions. So it doesn't always just have to be typed instructions. You can make a quiz that's more than 1 question at once. So maybe you want them to do 3 questions in a block. You can actually add multiple questions. And then this is also where I've set that timer. So then you can do a timer. So remember, timer is only good for live lessons, and self-paced lessons. Students will self-pace themselves through this. So say this is my quiz question, I will click save.
Kelly, can you require students to answer the quiz questions before advancing?
Yes-ish. I will have to show you that when we share. So whenever you create something in Canvas, it's always going to go down here to the bottom. And this is really important. If you just imported like 30 slides, it's sometimes not obvious because you actually have to scroll down to the bottom to see the new thing you created. Again, very similar to Canvas. If you add something to a module, it goes to the bottom of the module. But then you can actually grab it and reorder things. So then you can actually put your quiz where you intended it to be. Okay. So for time's sake, we're going to say, this is what I wanted. I'm going to rename it here. I think it does force you to give some tags to it, but you can put it whatever you want because it doesn't matter. And then you save and exit. And now this lesson is going to be part of my Nearpod library. So here's the one we just created together. I can now deploy it as a live lesson, or it's available for student pace via Canvas. Whenever you do anything with your Nearpod, it will always generate reports. So here's the one we just did together before we jumped into creation. If I click on these 3 dots, I can always see the data of how things happened in our Nearpod session. And I'll show you how you can see that in Canvas too. So your other creation option is do it in Google Slides. So if you click lesson in Google Slides, it's going to open your Google Slides. As you see, it is.
And Kelly, the lessons in Nearpod are not public unless you make them public. Is that right?
Correct. All right. So just by clicking in Nearpod, make a lesson in Google Drive, you see it prompted a new window of Google Drive. And the first slide they give you is actually the directions on how to get going. So essentially what it's asking you to do is through this Google Drive add-on, which since I've done it before, it's already here, you can actually activate the Nearpod. So I'm going to say open Nearpod. On the right here, it's going to pull out a panel of a lot of the similar options we saw directly in Nearpod on how to add these activities into your lesson. So I think this would make more sense if I actually showed you one that I was doing. So this is the one we did together. I did it in Google Slides. So I created my slides like I normally would want to. And then using that add-on, I was able to add all those different elements that we did together, okay? What will happen is as soon as you create this and or make a change to it, it will tell you, I'm trying to make a change so it saves it here.
And we have a question when you're ready.
Down here at the bottom, once your lesson's done in Google Slides, you'll have a button down here at the bottom that says save and send to Nearpod. So you save and send to Nearpod, and then when you log into Nearpod, your lesson will be there as well.
Gabe and Scott are wondering about whether the instructor can see student drawings.
So you'll be able to see, as the instructor, you will be able to see their submissions both in a live setting and in a self-paced setting. As the instructor, you will always see the student data. So let me show you how to add it to Nearpod, and then I'll pull that up from what we did together, because I think that will help.
And then can you import questions from other sources?
No, you'll have to create them directly into Nearpod. Okay. So for those of you that have been paying attention to hypothesis and some of the other things that you can do in Canvas, your directions at this point are the same. So if you want to do a live lesson, you go to nearpod.com, you find your lesson, you click live lesson, you generate that code and go. If you want it to be student paced through Canvas, this is what I'm going to show you right now. And the advantage of doing it in Canvas is, number one, you can have it integrate with your gradebook if you'd like to do it as a Canvas assignment. And number two, it's automatically going to populate their names. So you don't have to worry about any of that as well. So I'm on our homepage of our course, and I'm going to go into modules. So the first way I'm going to show you is how to add this as just an activity. So you don't want to put a column in your gradebook. You just want to give them like a practice activity, essentially. So what you would do is in any of your modules, you would click the plus sign. And from this drop-down list, you want to select external tool. And I already have all these directions for you guys on the Nearpod site that I created. And then this list here is alphabetical order. So you're going to want to go find Nearpod, and you should all see it. You're going to see it twice in my course just because I put this in here before I put it in for everybody. So here's Nearpod. I'm going to click on it. It's going to pop up my Nearpod library. So now I need to select the lesson that I want everyone to do. And you're always going to select it as student paced in Canvas. So I'm going to say, this is the one I want us to do. I'm going to say it's student paced. And I'm going to add, actually here I want to scroll down because I want to load it in a new tab. Remember, if you don't do that, they can still do it. It's just going to be within like the smaller Canvas interface. If you want them to have more space to see it, then you want to say load it in a new tab so it pops it in a new window. And then I add the item. And just like Nearpod, it goes to the bottom of your module. And here is that lesson right here. It's unpublished by default. And then when someone clicks on it, which you guys don't see it right now because it's not published, here's the button. It will load it in a new window. And now my student can do it self-paced. Okay, that's one way to do it. The second way to do it is through a Canvas assignment. So you guys can make assignments in modules or in assignments directly. Either way, the directions are exactly the same. So I'm going to click the plus sign. And this time I'm going to make sure I'm on assignment. I'm going to say it's a new assignment because I haven't created it yet. Nearpod test, add the item. So now I have an assignment here, unpublished by default. So what I want to do is I want to go into my assignment into edit mode so that I get more details. Okay. You still have the ability to put your directions here. You still have the ability to give it a point value, like all those normal settings that you're used to in a Canvas assignment. What you do need to trigger is under submission type, you need to go from no submission to external tool again. And then you need to click find or start typing Nearpod here. But I usually click find just because that's just what I do. And this is the same thing that we saw before. Alphabetical list of stuff that we have. You're going to find Nearpod, click on it. Again, it's going to pop up your Nearpod library so you can see all the lessons you have. Again, select student paste of the lesson you want to do. Select, 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 select. And then you have your load in a new tab option here in assignments. You can still give it a due date. You can still do that, and then you would save it. So this is also going to look exactly like the one that we did together in the beginning of this Nearpod overview, okay? So now what I would like to show you in the few minutes we have left is, say my students have done this either live or self-paced lesson, how do I see the results? So let's first talk about the self-paced ones they would do directly in Canvas. So this is what we did, the first thing we did in this hour that we've had together. And some of you have participated. So as the instructor, this is why it's advantageous to do this as an assignment, because if you guys like what discussions do, where they filter out those student responses to you in the speed grader, that is what Nearpod is now going to do for you in your assignment. So I'm going to click on grades. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing real quick because I made the mistake yesterday of showing grades, even though you guys are all like at 100%. Let me get in here first. And now I will share again. Okay, so essentially what I've done is I've gone into my grade book as an instructor, and it's a column in my grade book. There's that little icon indicating that students have done it. When I go into SpeedGrader, this is what I see. And I always pick on Christina because she's the first one in her alphabetical order. So what you're seeing is what Christina's answers were in the Nearpod that we did that was self-paced, and it's only her answer. So it's filtered out what this particular student has said and done so that now I can give her feedback or a grade or whatever you want, okay? You see we get some more data here. You get a timestamp. You can see participation, what she said for what are the F&M colors. She said blue and white. It was correct. So it's not going to grade it for you, but it's going to give you everything you need on one page, essentially, to make those decisions to give her a grade. Okay? So that's why doing it as an assignment is really nice, because it's all still in Canvas for you to do. In terms of doing it in Nearpod directly, let's see, go to Nearpod. So remember, we did that first lesson twice. We did it self-paced and then we did it live. So you can always check your data directly in nearpod.com as well. So here again is that lesson we did. I'm going to click the 3 dots and I'm going to say reports. And anytime you add or anytime you do this lesson, because you might do it multiple times, so we did it twice, you're going to get a new report generated for each lesson. So here's the one that we did via Canvas self-pace. Here's the one we did live. So let's look at the live results. So I'm going to click on the session, and it's going to look very similar to what we saw in Canvas directly, where here I'm seeing all my students because it's not filtering it anymore. Here's the things we did. Here's the responses that I got. And this can be downloaded as a PDF CSV file as well. So you will always have data. And even if you hide student names during your live session, your student names will appear for you as an instructor in your Nearpod data. So hiding names is more for hiding it from them seeing what each other has done, but you do get their names. If you want a truly anonymous feel, then you need to tell them to put in fake names when they join your Nearpod lesson.
Can you go to the draw it? Can you go? Yeah.
Yep, so I can click on all of them so I can see it in bigger, better detail. Oh, Elena, beautiful.
And Lisa's saying that her password appeared briefly in the report.
Password?
Lisa, maybe you need to explain. Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I can unmute. Yes, in the report with the list of students and so on as it went by, there was a column on the left with the student name, and then there was a middle column. And for some reason, my password, which now everyone is seeing, excuse me, I mean, I'll change it, but you know, I don't know why it's there, except it is. I had to use it to log into something in the course.
So there isn't any passwords for Nearpod. So when you get into a session, it puts your name. And then I think there's another line that says like other or nickname. That doesn't have to be filled out. I think it's just another way if like you wanted students to say their nickname or whatever, you can do that. But it's definitely not, it doesn't know your password, nor does it generate a password. So.
Well, I must have just thought that was a password box. My mistake. I should have read it more closely, but now obviously I will change my password.
But I will also blur it out in the recording of this video.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a surprise. I'm sorry to take up everyone's time.
No, you're fine. Don't put in your password. It wasn't asking for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, everybody makes mistakes, right? So I made one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I think the other important thing to note is if you are going to use Nearpod in Canvas especially, is it's not uncommon for us to make a Nearpod, put it in our course, and then make a change to our Nearpod lesson. Whenever you make a change to your lesson, you actually have to reselect it in your Canvas course because essentially you've broken that link and need to regenerate that link. So that's kind of a pain in the butt. But essentially you would just go through to the external tool and just reselect your lesson so that students have the most current link, or they're going to get blocked from your lesson, or they're not going to see your most current information because you've made a change. So that's another just kind of like weird thing about it, just because we edit things as we go. So just remember, if you do make a change to your lesson, to reattach it if you're doing it as a self-paced lesson in Canvas directly.
And the assignments can be given graded or ungraded, is that right?
Yeah, so doing it in an assignment is nice only because of this filtered view that you're seeing here. So if you don't want to mess with going back into Nearpod and looking at the data there and you still want this feel, you can still make it a 0-point assignment, or you can do it like I did in our class, where I actually set it as do not count towards the final grade. You can see it says that here. And the only not the only thing. The reason I did that is because, or how I did that was I checked this box right here. So that way I still get a view that's comfortable to me, but it's not affecting anyone's grade. So in our Canvas course, this Nearpod thing that we did together, I've also put the link here that's going to the IET site where I try to keep all the tutorials for stuff like this. So a lot of what we just did together is here, including, do you need your Nearpod button in your course? You can hide it. How to do it as a graded assignment, and how to do it just as an activity via modules. And what I haven't had time for yet is putting in the live session like we just did. So I'm gonna keep flushing this area out as we do stuff. But that's the basics of Nearpod.
One more question. Can you talk about the difference between using the assignment function and just embedding the Nearpod?
So just embedding the Nearpod is going to cause two issues. Number one, students are going to be more likely to do it without any identification that they've done it. So the advantage of doing it through Nearpod through the external tool is Nearpod is automatically going to generate their name into their session. The second thing is if you try to embed a Nearpod, it actually makes it only available for a short amount of time, and you don't want to have to deal with that. You want to have it available for as long as your course is going on, right? So that, and it doesn't actually look as good either. Like it's a lot smaller of an embed thing. So that's where doing it via the external tool is really helpful too.
And Louise has a question in the chat.
So if you make a lesson directly in Nearpod, it's not automatically in Canvas. You have to go through those steps of the external tool to select the lesson you want. So you can play around and make all the things in Nearpod you want and not have to worry about anyone participating in them. So remember, if you need an account, just send me a quick email so I can make sure you guys get that. And I'm trying to think what else here. The big thing is if you make an edit to your Nearpod is to relink it in Canvas essentially. But it is a great tool, and I do like that you can go in multiple directions with it. They add new activities like all the time. So like the flip grid you saw and the time to climb, which is where they can race, like all that's new within the past like 6 months. So I feel like they're always adding like more interactive features, which I think is nice. Yeah. So I know I have a question about generating the live code. So when you are in Nearpod directly, hold on, I have to, whenever you are looking at your lessons, let me pull up the right thing here before I go. Whenever you hover over your lesson, you have two options. You have the option to do it live or student paced. The student paced stuff is what I would definitely say you do via Canvas. But if you do want to do a live lesson, this is where you would do that. So if I'm in Nearpod directly and I just put my mouse over the lesson, I can either click live lesson, and this is going to be the part that generates the code, or student paced, which is what you want to do in Canvas directly.
Kelly, would you show people how you could put dates on the Canvas or on the availability of the student paced one?
Do not do it through here because it's not going to be the same.
Okay, good.
Do it directly through Canvas, because see, this makes it like go away after a certain amount of time. So why would you guys want to have to manage that? That's no fun. The other thing to note when you get your Nearpod account, try to click on myself here. Come here, self. There we go. So when I click on my profile up here, I do have lesson settings, and I wish this is something I could just turn on for all of you guys in our F&M account, and I can't. I actually have a question to Nearpod about this, but please go into your settings, because I think what you guys definitely want to enable is allowing the collaborate boards for student-paced lessons. For some reason, that's not on by default. And then this is also where you can find your require student submission. So I had mine off, but you can actually turn it on, which means they have to answer questions in order to participate and move on in the lesson. So you do have some settings that you can change that I can't change for everyone. So note that as well. Once you get your account, you'll just want to go to your lesson settings and turn on and off what you find valuable.
And Kelly, do you have to add Nearpod? Is there an app that you have to go install for Google Slides, or is it automatic?
Nope, it's all automatic. And remember, if you trigger Google Slides from your Nearpod, the first slide the Google Slide is going to give you is the directions on how to get started with Nearpod in Google Slides.
And Olga has a question in the chat as well.
So if you create one lesson, you can technically go live or student paced with it. But if you're worried about wanting to make a few changes based on the situation, when you click on the dots in your Nearpod, you can also duplicate it. So maybe make it once, duplicate it, call one your live lesson and call one your student paced one, and that way you can kind of keep track. You can see you can be organized in here if you want, like you can make lessons and put them in folders, and that's just for your own sanity if you want to be a really organized person.
Kelly, I'm thinking about students being able to access the material. If it's only in online instructor controlled, they can only come back as long as the code is live, right? As long as
so that's your advantage of doing it via the tool that's in Canvas, is they can always come back and review the information. In a live setting, then basically when your lesson's over, that's gone from them because you did it live. The other option you have, which is not a bad option, is say we did this live together on campus. In your Nearpod, you can also export your lesson as a PDF. So if you just want them to have something as a resource, and just to remember what you did in class together, you can always give them the PDF too. Obviously, it's not interactive and it's very static and stripped down, but it's there.
And just to review, the code comes up when you enter a lesson. So if you're doing a live lesson,
So I'm gonna click live lesson,
code,
and that's the first thing that pops up.
But that code also remains in all of your slides in the top left corner.
Yep.
So if students get booted out, they can see it again.
Yep. And then the website that students need to go to is always there. And again, they can download a free app if this is something you're going to do regularly. All right, I am going to stop sharing, and now I'm going to stop recording.